Welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dilan Delivers. This is our free webinar series from Dilan Consulting Group. I am Dr. Eugene Dilan, and I'm going to be your host and the moderator today for this amazing session with my dear friend, Dr. Robin Beers and Ezra Herzog. I'll have them introduce themselves properly in a couple of minutes, but before we jump in, just a couple of things I want you to know about me and the work that we do. I'm a licensed psychologist and a former nonprofit executive. I founded the Dilan Consulting Group over 15 years ago, and for nearly 3 decades now, I have been working with leaders and organizations to build cultures where both performance and people can thrive. At the heart of everything that we do is literally the foundational belief that business is human. And so with that, I want to, just for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I want to say a little bit about us. We are a boutique consulting firm led by psychologists. We understand what drives people, culture, and change. Our focus is on helping leaders better, helping leaders lead better, strengthening teams, and to create workplaces where people actually want to be a part of. So with that, today we're going to be talking about how to cultivate a dignity-centered workplace. And why, you might be asking, it's because we believe that dignity is the key to unlocking the best in your people. By the end of this session, you'll have some practical insights and ideas that you can take back to your teams and to your organizations. But before I go there, just want to let you know that we are recording today's session, and it will be available on YouTube along with all of our past Dilan Delivers episodes. With that, I also want to let you know that I am going to be monitoring the questions and the chat. And as time allows, I will pull some of those questions so that then Robin and Ezra can respond to them again as time permits. So with that, I'm going to put up a slide that says a little bit about Robin and Ezra, and I'm going to invite them to introduce themselves, but I'm going to stop sharing so that you could see their lovely faces. So please hold. Okay, I'm turning.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see so many of you here. And Ezra, I'd love for you to turn your camera on and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Robin. My name is Ezra Herzog, and I am an employee benefits advisor with Raise Insurance Solutions. I am the founder. Raise Insurance Solutions is a boutique California-based employee benefits advisory firm. We serve small and mid-sized employers who want more than just a spreadsheet at renewal. We use a high-integrity, hands-on approach to transform insurance from a confusing cost center into a strategic advantage. Founded by me.
Thank you for that, Ezra. And later on, at the end of the session, I will share their contact information again so that you have it. Robin, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Eugene. Hi, everyone. I'm Robin. I'm an organizational psychologist and a human-centered workplace designer. My practice is called Ubuntu Culture Company, and I draw from the indigenous South African philosophy of Ubuntu, which emphasizes interdependence and interconnectedness. And according to the Ubuntu worldview, we really cannot experience the fullness of our own humanity unless we recognize the humanity of others. So there's a very strong tie-in of Ubuntu to the concept of dignity. And so cultivating Ubuntu in business fosters collaboration and the co-creation of regenerative, life-affirming solutions in an ecosystem of trust and dignity. So we're going to deep dive into the concept of dignity today, which I think is a very, it's interesting because it's both an intuitive and a amorphous concept when it comes to thinking about what is dignity and what are the ways in which we can operationalize it in our lives. And sorry, I'm just trying to get my thing to go on SlideShare mode. Okay, so we're going to talk about what dignity is, why it matters in the workplace, how we can use certain strategies to enhance it, and how might it become violated through different actions or policies or procedures. So overall, we're looking at how can we create a dignity-centered workplace. So I started really thinking about the topic of dignity last year as I was just seeing it pop up everywhere. This is a screenshot from my blog, The Soft Stuff is the Hard Stuff, that you can subscribe to on Substack. And I just started to notice that the word was popping up everywhere. And I'm sure there are many reasons for that. But one reason is that it really is sort of the bedrock of our humanity to have our dignity affirmed and protected. So let's define it. Dignity is the intrinsic value that human beings have. It's not something that you have to earn, and it's not something that really can be taken away. It is the quality of being worthy of being affirmed, honored, and valued. It is also a basic human need, and it's a hallmark of our humanity. So, I said before that dignity is as amorphous as it is visceral. So on one level, we really can kind of feel in our bodies when we hear the word dignity, what it is and how it feels. But on the other hand, it's amorphous because when we think about what would it mean to have a dignity-centered workplace, or why is it that a lot of workplaces are lacking in dignity, it's hard to be very concrete and put our finger on it. And that's what I hope to address today. So, Ezra, I want to give you a moment because you are an employee benefits consultant. And I think that there's a tie-in between employee benefits and a dignity-centered workplace. I wonder if you could say a few words about that.
Thank you so much. I will spotlight myself. So, employee benefits, properly utilized, are an expression of the employer's care, respect for the health and well-being of the financial, emotional, psychological, and physical well-being of the whole person. Benefits are an expression of their leaders' philosophies and are critical to business goals because employee benefits help your employees live a good life. Ensuring that employees are well taken care of means that employees come to work as their whole selves and deliver on the mission of the organization. Hence, dignity is dependent on employees' minds and bodies operating in good working order to be of service to its stakeholders. Here are a few of the strategies that I like to use to create a dignified benefits architecture. One of them is choice. I have found as an employee that I have not given choice. We have a great plan, here it is, and there's no choice. So when employees have an opportunity to pick and think for themselves about what's best for them and analyze what's being offered, it can be helpful to have a few choices, not too many. I also believe that transparency in the decision-making process, when the employer is explaining or educating their teams why they made the decisions they are doing, can be very creation of a skillful process for employees to digest what's on offer for them. Also, I believe that access to education at a high level through some sort of a teacher, consultant such as myself who has access to data and analytical skills to deploy helps employers to it helps the employee to feel like they understand what's going on and they're being taken seriously in terms of their health and welfare.
Great.
May I ask Ezra a question?
Sure.
Ezra, you have a lot of experience. How often do you think dignity actually plays into the decision making, or am I being mean and judgmental to think that more often than not, it comes down to finances?
Benefits are expensive. They're also an investment. So think about the diligence that you play when you look at, like, I'm making a real estate or a financial instrument, like I'm buying a security. This is going to be minimum six-figure expense for a very small company. So when you start talking millions of dollars, what happens is that the business owners get very stuck on the spreadsheet, right? They're looking at the numbers, and it can be very stressful and easy. Well, there's also a lack of trust, right? So the insurance industry is not a trustworthy machine, right? So having somebody who can bring that level of trust to the system is really important to me. But also talking about these philosophies that are important to the leadership and not getting lost in the spreadsheet is so critical because
love
of
that.
the high ticket value. So when you get lost looking at numbers, we lose the whole point of why we're doing it in the first place.
Thank you for that. I just think that I was just heard an update, and I understand benefits are going to be going up 20 to 30%. Health benefits in the next year. And I know that for a lot of people, cost will be front and center around some of the decisions. And so to your point, it is important to recognize, as Robert and I would both say, business is human, and somehow we have to let that be a factor that drives decisions. Robin, please take it away.
Yeah, and I love, getting out of the spreadsheet and thinking about the bigger why. And, really, dignity is the fertilizer of employee retention and satisfaction. And we know that that these things, drive profitability. If you don't retain your employees, you're letting all of that knowledge and walk out the door. And then, disengaged employees who aren't satisfied, aren't as committed to contributing. So there was research that was done with 600 professionals, and this was across a wide variety of industries, that showed that the extent to which employees felt that their inherent dignity was honored had a direct correlation to their overall job satisfaction, their levels of engagement, their willingness to stay with their current employees. So dignity, as it's expressed in words, actions, and conditions, and that's what we're going to get into today, the concrete stuff, is central to people's happiness at work, how much they contribute, and if they want to stick around. Okay, I've got a new acronym for you. A lot of you have heard about VUCA, or you've used it, and VUCA was coined by the military in the Cold War era, way back when, and it stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So this new acronym is sort of an update to VUCA, because VUCA is not terrifying enough anymore, and doesn't accurately capture the degree of upheaval that we're living through in these poly-crisis times. So it was coined by a futurist named Jaime Cassio, and it stands for brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible. So you can think about this as kind of the atmosphere in which we're, showing up in our lives every day, including at work, in work. And if we were doing this as a workshop and we had, a luxurious couple of hours to spend on this, we would talk about what happens to our brains when we're feeling anxious, or that we can't control things, or that, things are incomprehensible and we don't know what's happening. In a nutshell, our brains don't like that. And our amygdalas become hijacked, and we become stressed, and often don't act as our highest selves that we would like to. But I believe that in an unpredictable, unstable world, that relationality, the ability to relate and care for each other, is the future's most vital competitive advantage. So, Eugene, I invite you to read this quote for us.
I get to read. Oh boy. Dignity is an internal state of peace that comes with the recognition and acceptance of the value and vulnerability of all living things. And that quote comes from Dr. Donna Hicks, a conflict resolution researcher, professor and consultant, and international advisor.
Yes. So I love this quote because it both points out the inherent value of dignity and that we are all inherently vulnerable as well. And so it's both kind of this tension between our strength, our greatest strength, and our greatest Achilles heel, if you will. So Donna Hicks, who you saw there on the last slide, has literally written the book. She's in fact written 2 books on dignity. And I like to say that she's, if Brene Brown is to vulnerability, then Donna Hicks is the same to dignity. And she's worked in a variety of like really high stakes conflicts around the world, in Northern Ireland, in the Middle East, in South Africa. And this is what she says about the criticality of dignity at work. The emotional volatility associated with having our dignity honored or violated cannot be overstated. When people feel that their value and worth are recognized in relationships, they experience a sense of well-being that enables them to grow and flourish. If, in contrast, their dignity is routinely injured, relationships are experienced as a source of pain and suffering. And so, dignity violations, which you'll learn about in a moment, are like a stop, do not pass, go barrier to relational progress. And in her research, she's identified top dignity strategies and top dignity violations. So I know there's a lot of words on this slide, but we're going to pop into the chat the link to these definitions.
It's already in there.
And you can, okay, great. You can pull that up. You can save it. You can bookmark it. So here are the top dignity strategies defined by and identified by Donna Hicks research. So I'm going to pick out 2 of my favorites and then ask Ezra to do the same. So one of the top dignity strategies is over there on the right, second from the bottom, inclusion. People experience dignity when they are intentionally welcomed into spaces, decisions, and experiences that reflect equity and belonging. Another strategy is safety. People experience dignity when they feel safe, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. This includes addressing harm when it occurs and upholding boundaries. Ezra, which ones resonate with you?
Thank you so much, Robin. So I spoke to this transparent decision making. Leaders share the why behind decisions regarding employee benefits. Part of this, speaking of the finance, I want to say, Eugene, 20 to 30% increases is a little bit inflammatory. We got to look at it on a case by case basis. I think 11% is sort of our norm right now. But when people understand why benefits are changing, they want to know how well the company is doing. And if things are constantly reduced, it gives them a sense that things are not going well. And so talking to them about what's happening in healthcare can be really important so they understand. So I love the transparency. Nobody likes making change, particularly to healthcare. So I love that. And then the one right below it, I think, is also perfect. Responsible and accountable. People experience dignity when others take ownership of their actions and make amends when harm occurs. Accountability builds trust and respect. So I think having, good quality service providers that stand behind what they do and that people feel like they can trust what's being communicated to them. There's a lack of trust in my industry that needs to be repaired. And having a human touch can be really helpful for that, and just being accountable, like doing what you say you're going to do and making things clean and easy to understand.
Robin, if I might, when we were rehearsing, I asked you what the difference between this and psychological safety and respect. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sort of adjacent concepts to dignity, like respect, trust, psychological safety. I would think of dignity as kind of the bedrock of people's humanity. They don't have to do anything for it. It just is. Whereas respect, you can affirm somebody's dignity, that they, that they have dignity because they are alive and they're present on this earth, but you don't necessarily respect them. Maybe you don't respect how they lead or a decision they've made or how they show up. Trust is related, but still slightly different in that, I usually trust people, and until something bad happens, right? And psychological safety is really about the here and now, and it's around openness. Do I feel like I can bring something up right here, right now, that is concerning to me? I may trust you, but in this context, maybe I don't feel that it's safe to address something. So very subtle nuances there, but hopefully that gives people a flavor.
Thanks, Robin.
All right. So just as there are dignity strategies, there are also dignity violations. And in Donna Hicks' work, she noticed that when conflicts occur, and again, she's, in all of these high stakes situations, that when there is no progress to be made on a particular issue or conflict, it's usually because there's been a dignity violation that is neither acknowledged or repaired. So, we know that conflict happens. It's a part of life. And how, we respond to it is kind of the learning edge that we all, are challenged to work with. So I won't spend as much time here so that we can get into practicing, but you can see some of these violations are about avoidance, like avoiding conflict or shirking responsibility. And some of them are more outward, and inflammatory, like angry outbursts or an extractive work culture. So we'll be working with these in a moment. And the last thing I want to mention is that, dignity occurs across all levels of the workplace. It's around the individual, how, you show up, how you think about yourself, how you hold yourself. It's also in the dynamic between managers and employees. It can be at the team or work group level and what happens there. And then also at the organizational level. And this is important, that dignity doesn't just show up in interpersonal interactions, like, this person was mean to me or this person is really nice to me. It also shows up in an organization's culture, their policies, their structures, and how they treat employees overall. Whether that is as, full human beings, recognizing their humanity, or as one dignity-centered leader says, recognizing that each person is somebody's precious child, or if they're more apt to treat people like, replaceable cogs in a wheel. So it's important to think across all of these levels when we're thinking about any kind of organizational dynamic. So we are going to get into practicing, and we have three breakout rooms. We're going to be in a breakout room for, depending on our time, I think probably about 15 minutes. I think we originally said 20, but we'll see how it goes. So and see, Ezra, I see a typo. I said to Ezra, I can't do a presentation with that one typo. These are the breakout instructions. Your moderator, which will either be me, Eugene, or Ezra, will explain these, but we're going to get a little practice in so that we can make this visceral yet amorphous concept of dignity more concrete in terms of the words, actions, and conditions and how it manifests. So with that, I will stop sharing and invite Eugene to place us into three breakout groups. So, Ezra, did you want to start with your dignity canvas and the discussion that you and your folks had?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, some of the group
it's a little funny on my end.
I know.
There's like a weird thing.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Maybe you can just speak through it.
Okay, I'll just speak through it. So, so our scenario was that we had a situation where I prefer a direct communication style and tend to speak my mind in meetings and offer feedback and ideas transparently. After a few months at a new job, a peer tells me privately that my tone is rubbing people the wrong way. The colleague doesn't offer specific examples, and no one else has mentioned this to me. And so now I'm unsure how to engage in meetings going forward. I wonder, do I have to completely change my style to fit in here? That was the scenario. And so, it was immediately noticed that, this was as you mentioned initially, this was a situation where it's not clear what's really going on. Am I really a poor communicator, or, is this just a perception of my team member, right? So we needed to get more information. And specifically what we're most concerned about is that there's some blaming going on of others, and is it real? So that was my first note. Interestingly, we did go to the problem, right? So that was the violation that was in place. So like our group felt like we wanted to focus on first understanding what the violation was, which was the blaming of others. And that the solution that we came up for that was essentially supervisor, needs to get in there and collect data, and based on the data, create a course correction, focusing on respecting the individual versus ridicule, considering any cultural scenarios that might be in play, and creating a sense of safety, where people can, the employee needs to feel safe to express their experience without fear. That is the repair that we suggested. So we're going a little backwards here. Initially, the solution that we suggested would be for me as a potentially ridiculed employee to recognize and just say thank you for the feedback without exacerbating it, right? Just use recognition as a strategy. The second affirming strategy was this would be a tool that the giver of the feedback could have employed, which is just to give me the benefit of the doubt instead of pointing out my deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one was, which I thought was great, was instead of singling me out in my communication style, because that has the opportunity, and this was Wendy's idea, which I thought was really brilliant, was just to focus on inclusion as a strategy. And because if I'm being told this information, it could really alienate me from my team. and from the company as a whole if I think that people are talking about me behind my back.
Yeah. And just not wanting to contribute further. Yeah. Anybody from this group want to add anything?
That would be Alex. Alex was in that group.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, perfectly.
I agree on everything Ezra said, and also I would like to add the mutual understanding. I remember I'm going to share a little bit of an example. Back then, 2 years ago, I was in a different company, and I remember one of my colleagues. We had some issue, same to this one, and she was called out many times by her attitude and her voice tone. And I was just thinking, where do we draw the line between, receiving feedback, but actually also retaining your own personality or what you are, your attitude? Because at some point, I remember she was telling me that she felt attacked. In fact, it was a little hard for her to distinguish, what she needs to do, and in the process of doing it, to not lose herself too. But I think that's where the values of the company are important, and also dignity. I also remember it wasn't really talked about. We had, the mission and the core values, but dignity, especially belonging to the HR department, we were under a lot of pressure. And one of my colleagues too, one time he said, I think we are losing ourselves, we are overworking and doing all these interviews and events for other people to feel respected or satisfied and everything. But I think we are losing ourselves. And I think that's also another important point for us to always keep it with us, also take care of ourselves.
Thank you. Those are two really excellent points. And to your first point about, what is appropriate, and how do we make room for difference and diversity as well in the way people communicate. And sometimes it can be, a fine line. I remember, a startup that I worked with that had the value of openness. And after a while, it had to be pointed out that, our value of openness shouldn't mean that we get to say anything to anyone at any time in any way, that we still have to attend to protecting and honoring people's dignity. At the same time, different people and different cultures have ways of interacting that are more direct, less direct, and those conflicts need to be, there needs to be a way in which to unpack those in the moment. And I want to invite Eugene, if you have any comments about that. Seems like your wheelhouse.
I would basically say that the world that we live in today is different than the world that I necessarily grew up in. I'm 62. When I was growing up working in business, it was very hierarchical. Emotional intelligence was not a thing. Today, people expect leaders to be emotionally intelligent. I have a new client I'm kicking off next week. He's based in Paris, very, very, very senior. He has a group, team that's located in different countries, and he's in charge of a global initiative worth billions of dollars, and he's in trouble because he is a little bit of that old school. With all due respect, he's also got a little bit of that French a way of leading, so today the expectation is that leaders have to adjust to the individual to bring out the best. Now, that doesn't mean you lose yourself, Alex. You're absolutely correct. And yet at the same time, we have to recognize that in this world that we're living in, it's important. You can't just change people like cogs. Sometimes you have someone who has technical expertise and they're an important piece of the puzzle. And so you have to find a way to help them to learn new approaches, not necessarily lose what they have, but to add to their repertoire. I'm going to leave that there and say we have about 3 minutes before I move into closing up for today. So let's hear from your group, Robin.
Okay. So Cooper, I'm going to share the scenario if you want to just briefly describe it, and then we'll get into our canvas. Is Cooper there?
There we go. I'm here. Sorry. Can you hear
Zoom
me?
shame. Zoom is trying
Yeah.
to rob your dignity.
There
Okay.
you go. So basically, this is based on a company retreat, and the activities include a happy hour networking, rigorous early morning hike, and full day sessions with no options for remote participation. And it's under this guise that participation is encouraged but not mandatory, though the leaders are sort of indicating that showing up demonstrates a commitment. And so we identified sort of the three areas that would that are affirming strategies, starting with inclusion, right? So there was a big discussion around the way the event was presented, that it was inherently prone to not being inclusive because you had to meet certain barriers or certain criteria to do some of the activities that were really kind of served up as optional, but implied to be mandatory. And so that was a big discussion. And we talked a little bit about benefit of the doubt. This was a great insight from our other participant in the room, that, you know, if folks couldn't do some of the activities, that you sort of needed to give them the benefit of the doubt that they had a good reason not to. And so that creating that space in this sort of environment of a company retreat would drive more dignity, because it would take the pressure out of the system, so people could choose to opt out if they had a valid reason, and the culture would imply that, hey, we understand that. The last affirming strategy for dignity is fairness. So inherently, a vigorous hike, as an example, not everybody can do a vigorous hike. And so that creates a situation where those who aren't able to are inherently left out, and it's unfair. Also, we had a good discussion around the happy hour, which includes alcohol, and so that creates some tension and some problems.
And so I'm aware of time. We're probably out of time, but just in terms of the dignity violation of, creating these in-group, out-group dynamics, and there was a lot of other things going on as well. I will stop sharing, and I really want to thank everybody who was able to attend live and in person. Any closing thoughts from anyone, especially anyone who didn't get a chance to chime in?
I'll chime in on that last scenario. Brene Brown says that clarity is kindness, and giving double messages is just so confusing for people that it's a setup. You can't win in that kind of a scenario. So thank you for that example and for your sharing, Cooper.
And I just wanted to say one last thing too, which is when we think about to your point about, the expectations for leaders have evolved over the years. Leaders are guardians of dignity. And I just wrote that down today before, and I wanted to make sure I said that, because we're all leaders in some ways in our lives. And so that means we also have the responsibility to guard the dignity of those who are following us.
Well said.
Thank you, Eugene.
So let me just say a couple of things. One of them is thank you, Robin, and thank you, Ezra. I can't say enough. These sessions are only possible because people volunteer their time and their effort to put together content to create good conversation and hopefully give people something that they can take forward. I will say that I'm a firm believer that individual behavior shapes group norms and ultimately drives the culture of an organization. So if you think about what Robin just said in terms of leaders being the guardians of dignity, absolutely. So here's their contact information, and let me make that bigger so you can see it. And maybe you want to take a screenshot of it, but if you're here, you probably know Robin quite well. And then I'll also share that this is how you can reach out to us And let me just say that the YouTube for this will be up, the video on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. Here's our website. So if you just go to our website, you'll find this and many other resources like blogs. And I have a whole series of ebooks that really give you a quick study on change management or DE&I or how to build teams. So again, I thank you very much for joining us, and pay attention for the next one. We'll see what other interesting content we can bring along. Again, thank you, Ezra and Robin. I wish you all a great week. Thank you.